Get it out. I've got the pages which are important for you. Would you like to see them? There's something unique sitting in that manual. I often wonder whether to chuck it out or not, but I've left it in. It's the centrepiece, which has centrepiece of colour pages, has the periodic table on it, and it's heavily coded. It's coded for the function of the elements in the organic world. It's not coded for the function of the elements in the chemical world, in the sense of inorganic chemistry. It's coded for their function in organic systems. Many of them, for instance, we think we can put on superphosphate, and we can, and get away with it a bit. But there are two reasons why in the end we can't keep on. The first is that all of that carries its own pollutants. The two very common ones are cadmium and uranium. So as you add superphosphate annually, so cadmium uptake increases in your plants to the point where many market gardens who are inorganic, the cadmium in it is way beyond health levels, and that goes for most of the vegetables you're buying. The cadmium levels are way beyond that, and that is a deadly poison, and it's an extraordinarily painful death. It's a screaming death. So constant application of superphosphate to food systems will kill you in the long run. The second one about the uranium, it is radioactive, and it builds up annually and remains in your soils, and it's another poisonous material. So although the benefits of phosphate are high on phosphate-lacking soils, the benefits of annual applications are zero. It actually becomes extremely detrimental. Now, most of American and modern Australian and European agriculture has reached those levels of pollution because there's no clean phosphate sources. There's no sources of phosphate which are just phosphate. It's always accompanied by. But the other thing that happens is phosphate blocks zinc uptake in plants and animals. Now, zinc at first may sound pretty slight to you. Look at zinc closely. Zinc is the coenzyme for almost all your food processing systems. So you can eat your head off, but you can't absorb your food without zinc. The other effect you might notice is wound healing slow or none, and sexual development is not. You don't develop testes, ovaries, penises, all that. So zinc is very important to the expression of sexuality, to the digestion of food, the absorption of your amino acids. It's a coenzyme with most of our enzymatic processes in our bodies. 25 milligrams. And you're lucky to get 8 milligrams a day from crops grown on superphosphate. So at the same time that superphosphate's adding cadmium, it's decreasing zinc. And the other thing it will do eventually is cause elevated copper levels in your blood. So if you have ultra-high copper levels, you're copper poison. It's because you're taking up that double plus ion in the absence of zinc. So it's indication much of the world's population now has high blood copper level. It's particularly high in public servants for an interesting reason. They drink a lot of coffee out of these copper heated vessels. So fortunately there's an awful lot of public servants poison themselves sitting there drinking, out of these urns that keep on boiling. There's very high copper levels. The other place you expect to find copper levels high at sublethal levels is in desert populations where zinc uptake's blocked by the high alkalinity. So there's another problem, two problems for you. The fact that a lot of our vegetables are poisoned with cadmium is on the secret list. It's totally suppressed in Australia and Britain by a government D notice. Because effectively, there's very little food left that is safe to eat. So the reason why you don't want anybody to know is, you know, if they die quietly of something, that's okay. If everybody starts to reject the food because it's cadmium poison, that's a disaster. Because who supported and actually, in America, for instance, pays 80-something billion a year towards the cost of those things? Your government. Yeah. The direct and indirect subsidies for agriculture, and particularly for artificials, is worldwide through governments. Because it's logical, because who in the hell pays for governments to get elected? And as you know, well, it was on the news yesterday and today, it costs you $70 million to get somebody in now, in the Republican Party at least, and $30 million to get someone in the other side. But nobody's paying the other side anymore much. But a lot of people are paying the Republican Party. And who you pay works for you. So you're not going to see any decrease in the subsidies either to agricultural colleges or to agriculture. And you're not going to see any freedom of information. And the only way to know is to go to NutriClean, which is an independent testing authority, and send your vegetables there and see if you can eat them or not. And mostly you can't. Last information I had from there was they'd found 2 organic carrots on sale in America, and they wanted to know whether they took them a week or 2, they tracked them back. It's a bloke growing them in his backyard up in Colorado. But there's no organic carrots grown, you know, in America on the broad scale. So what you're doing and what you never intended to do, and make sure of that, nobody intended to do it, is you're building up problems that become insuperable. You know, superphosphate, we put ours on in 1953 on our fields. By 1954 we had every rabbit for 100 miles on our fields because of the phosphate content of the forage, because animals don't thrive without phosphate in the forage. So nobody put it on then until everybody went for rabbits, because to put on superphosphate was to get eaten out by rabbits. But by 1955, due partly to my own, I was a researcher in CSIRO, we'd beaten the rabbit, so we could put on superphosphate, and from then on they never stopped putting it on until today, and this is 1995, so we have 200 years of superphosphate in most of the soils, and we have extraordinarily heavy cadmium loads in all the products. So, but nobody intended the cadmium. There was no evil intent. So, to quote myself, evil turns out to be rigorously applied stupidity.
Any chance we could adapt?
The intention is not to be evil. Okay. Oh, shit, Bill. Rigorously applied stupidity. Nobody intended evil. I mean, I grew up and had the same experience as everybody my age. You know, I felled trees for a living. I put on superphosphate. When I got 2,4,5-T out to kill blackberries, I thought my world was made, you know. It's only later and in retrospect you can see where that eventually leads you. Broadly speaking, biocides affect us as much as anything else. So it's smart to be organic, it's clever, it's sustainable, and it's you know, benefit. You're not hurting anybody. And after all, it's a long time ago since Silent Spring was written. When was it written? In the 50s. And it was spot on. But we need to rewrite it, because we have closed down our major river systems, the Darling, Murray. It's like closing down the Mississippi. And we've closed it down because we're growing blue-green algae, of which not only algae but its metabolites are very poisonous. Cattle can't drink it, people can't drink it. That means you've closed down 35 towns along those rivers, purely on the basis of the escape of fertilisers to the water. And that's not the fault entirely of the farmers. 30% of that come in from the sewage lines, 60% from farms, most from cotton. So you can close down your country if you continue this sort of stupidity long enough. And Russia, when I got there, when it was the USSR 6 or 7 years ago, it was about 88. There were 700 academicians we met in Kiev, in Kursk. They said, we are terribly worried. None of our major rivers has drinkable water in. We were forced by this pressure from Stalin and Khrushchev to overproduce wheat. We made bigger and bigger tractors, put more and more fertiliser on. We no longer can produce wheat in Ukraine. It's finished. It's totally compacted, and we don't know how to uncompact it. And all that nitrate we put on the Ukraine is in the rivers. But we have no alternative but to drink it. Therefore, they expect, rising rates of cancer till it gets like America, where cancer is actually epidemic. Because when you're drinking nitrosamines, you're drinking cancer. Add chlorine to that, and you've got the cancer map.
Is there any point when this whole thing can collapse, this industrialized agriculture?
It already has collapsed. You can go to Ames, Iowa and ask the agricultural faculty, they'll say, yes, we were guilty, we're sorry, it's collapsed. They had a nice day from 1940 till today, but it's incredible what they did, and they never measured it. So it has collapsed. But it's collapsed everything else with it, and this is the sad thing. Of course they're still doing it because, the only way you can find out is either make direct measurements yourselves or, get your data somewhere that you can get it.
Death rates.
But a lot of the world's turned around. All of Southeast Asia is about around. No more fertilisers, no more pesticides, no more biocides. Indonesia went. Iceland's gone. Anywhere you can get to a parliament which is reasonable, it's gone. Zimbabwe's gone, a lot of Southern Africa's gone. So the markets are closed. Most of India's gone. India had the Green Revolution. So India really hates, artificials and biocides. There's nothing alive anymore in the paddy fields. So there's no disease control mechanism. Indonesia did a great thing to persuade its farmers. It planted the little rices and it put the plastic bags over each 10 or 20 sets in the farmers' fields, and it didn't do anything else for some of them. And of course the rice got eaten by the brown leafhopper. But in some of the other ones, it put one spider, and you can't find a leaseoffer sometimes. So that was it. As far as the farmers were concerned, if they can't see spiders and frogs and lizards in their fields, they're not going to use biocide. Because the pest problem, the brown leaf hopper problem in rice is insoluble. It's very like the red spider mite problem in apples and things. It's literally insoluble. It starts with spraying and it never ends. So all apples are soaked in poison, sad to say. They're all red spider mite. And the soybeans onto now 36 different sprays to get a crop of soybean through. Each one different, because essentially every week they've got to change the spray because, your pests are resistant to 25 of them or something, and you've got to hit those with something different. So all your soybeans are grown in Mexico, Obregon, north and south, down to Navajo, and every chemical company in the world has large warehouses there. So your soybeans has become a deadly crop because a lot of those sprays are systemic sprays. They're in the bean. And the only reason we grow soybeans is to paint cars. They're not grown for food. I suppose maybe 1% of the crop is eaten by people, but it's the same crop. The rest of it is simply oils expressed. It's the only basis for car paint. So you can imagine how many soybeans you need. Otherwise, only cars you can get are the natural colours of the metal. So you want a red car or black car, you've got to grow an acre of soybeans, you know.
And newspaper.
Yes. Yeah. Well, soybeans are subject to a tremendous amount of investigation as to its products. You can make anything you like out of soybeans. I was talking to a businessman going down when I last went to Mexico, sitting beside me. He said, in a few years, we'll be able to make everything out of soybeans. He said, you know, you'll think you're eating eggs or meat or something. It'll all be soybeans. So, and I said, why do we want that? What do you see wrong with meat and eggs? He said, he said, I won't be eating it, but you will. You, the people, will. and I said, well, that's nice of you, you know. But what is behind that is the soybean is the only crop in the world in which 100% of the patents are owned. There is no free seed anymore in soybeans. So that's it. It's sort of 90% of wheat, 100% of soybeans, 80% of barleys and things are owned by only 5 chemical companies. So the soybean is the first crop to go out of human possibilities. No longer possible for you to consider as a food. But the others are going fast. The 46 main crops are being patented as we speak. And that means that they'll all be produced under contract with heavy biocides. So you can kiss your ass goodbye, really. If you want to see how soybeans are, just take a trip to Mexico. It's not far away. You'll be there in a day and a half driving. Head for Obregon. That's soybeans north and south. You look at it, there's no living thing there. There's not a bird, a lizard, an insect. It's salted for miles. The soil's in total collapse. If you want to see the process of soil collapse, you will see it there. You know, you've got this sick crop, you know, fed to sick people for hundreds of miles, and it's destroying Mexico. And that is very sad. That crop will destroy Mexico. You won't notice it, but after you get past Hermosillo, Mexico's already destroyed. That was soybean 5 years ago. And as you go down south, there's still some living soybean fields, but very little. And salt is eaten everywhere it was. And soybeans remove more forest than all of the wood chipping combined. As I say to you, you should go and see it. So just drop into Guaymas and have a look at your health food production, and then go on down to Obregon and do it. Otherwise, you don't have this sense of anger, and you don't have a real sense of what catastrophe is. You don't know what you're talking about till you go and stand on it. Ask the civil engineers. They can't lay sewer pipes anymore. They can't put pipes in. They said there was salt 60 metres down, now it's 1 metre down. Said, we can do nothing. You can't put foundations of buildings in, nothing.
What does it do with the construction?
Well, when you've got solcrete, it eats all the pipes, including the plastic ones. And it tips your buildings over. It's nice, and salt is rather like ice. It flows in great uplift systems. You've got 60 metres of solid salt. And that has eaten all the Yaqui Indians. The salt has swept down and wiped them out, right to the coast. So it's got rid of the Yaqui and the Mayo, who are forest Indians. And you know, there's a little clump of Mayo left, a little jungle in this wilderness. You know, it's so sad. So don't listen to me raving on, say must be mad or a liar. Go down there, have a look at disaster, and think of what you're doing, you know. Don't imagine you're not part of it. Your car's painted, you're getting soybeans, you're the ones eating soy, you're the ones bringing soybeans up to some cult, you know. It's true. If you want to look at real wreckage, go and look at where they've been looking for crystals to sell in America. You know, disaster. Unreconstructed diggings for miles. I mean, your appetites are so unnecessary. What was I going to talk about? Home garden. It's the only way out, I tell you. You haven't got a home garden, you're dead. Okay, so you've got to straight. Now, let me get this through to you. This is a serious affair. Well, we're involved in a serious business. You've got to be serious about it. You've got to take it seriously. You've got to be indomitable. And what's the word you used? You've no fucking compromises. Right? You don't compromise. You say what the truth is and let people make the decisions, but you don't let them get away with shit. Right? So you're in a fight for your life, and that's all there is to it. You've lost it, but, you know, here we are in the last days. If you stand in one place, here's your little feet here, and sort of lean out a little bit. You walk there from a path, right, and reach around you like that, and that's your garden. You cover 12 square metres. So where you can reach from standing in one place is 12 square metres. Works out about the same every time. Maybe if you're small, you need 2 of them. Well, why don't you put another one opposite that one? That being your path. Now those gardens are the least path for the greatest production bed. If you can get path down less than that, let us know. The other thing about this is about 6 feet across, maybe a little larger. So a single sprinkler can cover all of that. So you can water the whole garden from that point. If you don't have a sprinkler, you can hand water it by hose easily, and if you don't have that, you have to sink unglazed earthenware pots in it and keep them full of water. So you fill those with water, put a little flat stone on top, and refill them every 4 or 5 days. And that is the most economical way to water a garden, if you're really up against it, you know. You take all your gargling water and everything out and put it in those little pots, and it weeps out and grows an area about 3 feet across. So it'll water these on its own. Now you paper that all over with newspaper because we're in America. If we're in India, we do it with banana leaves. And you throw straw on top, which we do everywhere around the world because we go and cut it. And you plant it with a bucket of soil, which you got from a nice place, so it's nice soil. You scraped it up on the forest floor or dug it out of a pigsty or something. And you make 3 or 4 things on here. There's your straw, or your dry banana leaf, whatever. There's your newspaper, overlapped, so there's never any more weeds. And here's your planting things. One is a lens, about 3 inches thick in the middle, of good soil, and on that you sprinkle fine seeds. So that's your patch of carrots or radishes or something.
How big is that? 3 inches?
Thick in the middle, about 15 inches across. So you make as many little patches of fine seeds as you like. you know. And then another one is you push your hand out and force a little hole open and leave a handful of soil in it. And in that you plant your seedlings and your large seeds like beans. Right, now for root crops and things, you put them down on top of the newspaper, but you stick a spike down and punch a hole in the newspaper, and then you put your potatoes down the bottom there, and your Jerusalem artichokes and your tubers. Pardon? That's about 4 or 5 leaves thick. You know, New York Times gives you several square metres. It weighs 12 pounds and you use 4 pages thick. And you wet it down. You never repeat the newspaper bit. Then a good idea is to newspaper your little standing spot and put sawdust, thick sawdust on top. Now, so the garden is weed-free. You haven't put a lot of effort in. If you had your bucket of soil ready and you about 3.5 to 4 bales of straw and your seeds and tubers and that, from go to woe is 40 minutes. Done it hundreds of times. And if you're going on a plan, you know, you plant it in spring, that's your next 6 months dealt with, and you plant again late summer to early autumn. So you do it twice a year, you plant it.
You throw some worms in there too?
No, you don't have to put any worms in. If there's a worm within 5 miles, you get it. It's like most things, you don't actually have to cart them there. You have to make a place for them to be if they get there. And the worms get there. I think worms love New York Times best of all, although Dr. Zeus, wow. I used Dr. Zeus once and they were there within hours, you know.
How thick do you put the straw on top of the newspaper?
You know, it doesn't much matter, 9 or 12 inches. If you want to really kick it in, you can use lucerne hay, which is expensive, right? It costs you $30 to do that with lucerne hay. And that is very high protein, and your garden is immensely successful. Yeah, lucerne, yeah, alfalfa. But mostly you can't do that. So you maybe put a book or 2 of alfalfa around the bottom and just put ordinary straw on. So you've done it and planted it, and out you hop. And then if you're going to forget to water it, invest $60 in an automatic single outlet watering machine and tell it to water it every night and just go out and pick it after that. So we put about 12 of these a day in Aboriginal backyards. That's with lots of cups of tea and laughing and dirty jokes and everything. So we set them up for 6 months, fresh food with that. That doesn't matter if that's on concrete. So if it's on concrete, put 3 or 4 inches more hay. It doesn't worry the carrots or anything else. Let's come down and go down full length in the hay. So, and if these are good things, those. So if you have people in wheelchairs, we give them 2 of these, so you can come down the wheelchair and attend your garden. And just do the same. You put the newspaper on here, and then you loosen hay, and then 2 bricks or 3 bricks, and then fill it up with hay, and just hand them their seeds in their bucket of soil, and away they go. But old people in wheelchairs say 2 tables produce too much food for them. So they say really 1 table is plenty.
Now, are you tilling any of the soil underneath this at all?
No.
You just lay it right out?
We didn't do any heavy work. And if we don't plant weeds, we never get weeds either. So there's no weeding and no tilling, no digging. And the crops and the worms together work it down to soil in 3 years. So you've got to do a remulch. I spend 40 minutes every 3 years to supply food. Gardening, end of gardening. Although that sounds a bit careless, it's the result of an awful lot of trial and work to get that recipe right. Gardening, end of gardening. Although that sounds a bit careless, it's the result of an awful lot of trial and work to get that recipe right. The first time I heard about this system was somebody who came to my garden in '54 and said, "Oh, you're a Ruth Stout devotee." "What's Ruth Stout?" I said. And I said, this woman in America had written a book on no-dig gardening, which I didn't get till 11 years later before I could find it. And it is a great book. And I think it's out of print. Ruth's dead. And it is a great book, and she was a great woman. It's one of these good, tough books, you know. We mounted a very strange challenge to the Orange Bathurst Agricultural College. We challenged them to a strawberry growing contest. This is real weird. And they did it the way they had to do it, you know, mound her up, put plastic all over it, pour chemicals along the roads, plant their strawberries and sort of stand, and they laid drip lines under the plastic. Ruth did her mulch garden, I did mine. We all used the same strawberry runners. When strawberries were on the crop, we weighed the strawberries per length of crop. Both of our beds beat them flat. But the deciding factor was we set out bowls of strawberries for taste tests amongst the students who all wanted to be the ones who won. We weren't being fairly judged. And our strawberries, on blind tests, our strawberries beat them flat again.
Well, can you use leaves, broad leaves, if you don't have newspaper? Or
Yes, you can. You can use palings. You can use flat stones. What you have to do is cut light out to the Earth's surface so that there's no chance of weed seeds germinating. And I think they need a 3/millionth of a second flash of light to start germinating, something tiny. So like when you're double digging and turn the sods over, flash, flash. You're making yourself a weed problem. If weeds come up in this, if by any chance, you know, a dock sometimes got enough root to push its way right through and come out on top, just push it down and put more straw on it. And that will keep you for about 80 minutes a year. It'll keep your family in salads and most ordinary vegetables, you know, cauliflowers, whatever. So you just put in the number you would use in a year, that's all. But then you have to sit down and work out your whole year on a piece of paper. Because only you know what you like. And you plant the sort of squash you like, and you plant sort of cucumbers you like. You can also put a little trellis up the back of the whole thing. And I always put a row of sunflowers or Jerusalem artichoke around it, so you can put a little trellis up here. And I always put this row of tall, Jerusalem artichoke really is the best. Rounded, it's a little windbreak, and it's also another crop. And that's it. But if you're out on the high plains and it's, you know, screaming cold and the winds are cold, nothing to stop you building a four-tire wall, 4 high, around it, and face that to the sun. And that gives you a beautiful, sheltered and warm, permanent environment. I fill the tyres up with dirt where I have to do this, and I put nasturtiums and stuff in them, you know.
Bill, what do you put around it? 4 tile?
4 tyres.
Oh, tires, sorry.
For which someone pays me $2 now, because they got to pay $5 to dump a tyre these days, so they pay me $1 to take it away. So, you know, you can make $40 or $50 around there. Generally speaking, I do not approve of tyres, and I only use them where it's totally functional to do so. And you don't mulch over lettuces. You've got to leave those up on there. Lettuces will not take mulch at all. One of the few vegetables that won't push through a lot mulch. Lettuces disappear if you let bits of straw blow across them. They just damp right out. They're real light sensitive. The other thing, if you use some of the smaller lettuces and let them seed, they seed extraordinarily well in mulch. You know, there's little tiny French lettuces, little brown ones, what are they called? Not exactly. Yeah, some little type. You know the ones I mean. Very small, reddish-edged lettuces. They seed down like crazy in mulch. You get 1,000 up and then just pick them out of that original bed and put them in another one. Your little seeds, you put that little pad of dirt there for your carrots and lettuces and all those tiny seeds. And if you want to make sure they come up, you lay a damp newspaper on them and keep looking, and as soon as they've shot, take it off. One of the reasons people can't get carrots is they bury them, and you should surface plant them and then cover them with a board, in a row. But keep looking, because if you leave them 2 days too long, they'll get stuck in the board. Keep looking and just flip it off as soon as they're well and truly germinated. These are all gardening tips. I know Anthony Rodale quite well now, actually, and I said to him, what is all this fortune founded on? What is it you guys do? What do you publish all the time, And he said, garden tips. Yeah. So the number of times you could read or could have read that you put a board on top, you find seeds and get good germination. And whenever you plant carrots, always sprinkle a few radish with them, because it helps space your carrots a little, and you got your radish out and gone before your carrots are up, and it seems to help everything if you're into plant. Sometimes when there's too much sun, I think we discussed this in the climatic section, your plants don't do well because there simply is too much light. And in South Africa, we don't 75% shade cloth. You get a better garden, especially with things like carrots and like parsley. It hates too much light. So, some shade of some sort. If you're a bushman, amazed me. I went out in the Kalahari and showed them how to garden pretty well like this. And then the women took it up and off they went. When I got back there a week later, they had all this done. And every one of these beds had a thatched, they put sticks in here and they thatched up and over across it like that and put light shrubbery on it. So it was like so many little huts, and they hadn't taken a single other plant out. They went right through the complex low bush was there. They hadn't dug up anything native to do their gardens. So little huts wound in and out of the native bushes. It was really delightful. And they were going along with their watering can and watering through the brush on these little trees. I said, what made you thatch your garden beds? I said, you wouldn't leave a baby out in the sun, would you? I said, well, no, I wouldn't, But obviously I would have. And, here, when you look in, here's these tiny little baby shoots, and you can see that they're just not going to do it in the sun. So that's what they do with their babies when they've got to leave them. So this is what they do with their babies. So it was very successful. And I at a rough estimate, I'd say they gave it about 70% shade, but shifting shade too. So sometimes rays of light came on the plants, sometimes they're in shade. Just what you do is design your spring planting for all your summer food and your late summer, early autumn planting for all your winter food. So your late summer, early autumn for cold winters. We don't have cold winters, we have clear, sunny, hot winters, dry. But for cold winters, you put all your cold crop in, all your cauliflowers, however many you need for the year. Cabbages, cauliflowers,
Potato.
yeah, what do you eat with chicken livers and soul food?
Collard.
Your collard greens, and your yeah. Kales are nice, aren't they? You get all different colours of them too. It's pleasant. Some look like roses, for God's sake. And your chards and beets. You don't plant enough chard in the United States. I've got to tell you that. I'm sorry to have to tell you that. But, this much chard will actually run on for 8 months and give you all the fresh greens. And it really is a good plant. It's to some extent close to unknown, but they're starting to get it now because there's red ones and yellow ones. So if they're colourful enough, you plant it. But you certainly don't plant enough parsnips, I regret to say, which are passing up, probably one of the best baked vegetables. If you like sweet potatoes, parsnip, it is delicious. And baked vegetable is important for another reason. Dry baking, just wash them, don't peel nothing. Just wash them, put them on a grill in the oven and dry bake them. Really concentrated food for children. And they get a lot of nourishment out of dry baked vegetables. And you can only do that with root crop. But if you boil them, they get far too much moisture. They can't eat enough to get significant amounts of vitamin A or something. So when you've got little kids, bake them their roots. And they like the baked roots too. Or give them to them raw. I think the best way to give kids carrots is wash the carrots and leave them carelessly about somewhere. I've never got over those little red radishes. I grew them when I was 7, terribly successfully. I was one of the great all-time radish gardeners. So I really love them, and if I see them, I just can't resist. I buy them and eat them because, you associate them with the pleasure of growing them, and which you've had all your life. And I never brought a green pea inside knowingly. and my kids, all you find in the garden is little heaps of green pea husks. So you don't need to cook that many things, but some things you do, and if you do, bake them if you can. If you can't, then just steam them just cooked with al dente. So getting you right, and all your greens you should cook in very little oil, stirring them till they're wilted, just wilted, not cooked in anything, and then put just a dash of lemon juice or vinegar with them, and that way you get all your A vitamins out of your greens, and some of your protein out of it too. But if you don't put that oil with it, you can't actually absorb the vitamins. And no matter where you read your recipes, whether it's an Eskimo cooking wild-gathered greens in seal oil or an Alaskan housewife, cooking with bacon grease, or whether you're having a salad with a French or an Italian dressing, everybody's got the sense to put some oil with their greens, and so they can absorb the vitamins. Because vitamin A is no good to you without oil or fats. And in actual fact, sometimes your greens aren't much good to you without a sprinkle of something like blood powder. If you want to get all your iron out of your greens, you've got to eat the tiniest piece of meat with them. It doesn't have to be a steak. It can be a sprinkle of dry pounded deer but it actually assists your body enormously in extracting iron. We've actually dealt with gardening in terms of providing yourself with your food. You need about 4 square metres of box that you put your little potatoes on the bottom of, 9 inches apart, and just fill the whole damn box up with straw this high.
What?
Straw. Or as they come through, just keep burying their little leaves in straw till you've got them coming through about that much straw. And then leave the box a bit higher so the tops of them don't blow off. It's always catastrophic when you fill your box up with potatoes, the top blows off before they set. So leave the box a bit higher than the straw. And 2 square metres of that, with 2 crops, that is your staple food. That's about 3 bags of potatoes. If you can eat more than that, you're eating too many potatoes.
Question. 4 square meter box filled with 3.5 feet of straw as they grow.
Yeah. And
How
just
far apart do you plant the potatoes?
9 inches each way, because it fills up with potatoes all the way, right up. You've got very little straw left when you knock it down. Just take one side down and pull them out. It's all potatoes.
And that's a covered box? No.
Oh, no, Bruce, no. Perfectly open at the top, a little higher than the straw. So the sides of the box come up, say that far above where you filled it. So it shelters the top. So that, you know, otherwise it's pretty weak in that straw. So it is devastating if the top blow off and they're in flower, actually. And then there's the famous herb spiral. You don't know permaculture if you don't know herb spiral. So you build a mound of dirt 2 metres across, like that, and get some rocks or bricks from a destruction site and come up round it in a spiral, filling in with soil and wind up it. But put that triangle up first. It's much easier to build up round that cone. I built an awful lot of them in my day. So, you know, just put a cone of rubble 6 feet across the base, and you want the thing to end up 3 feet high if you can. Sinks a bit. And then plant all your herbs in it by the kitchen door. And a trial run, you know, put your flannelette nightgown on and put your fluffy slippers on. And if you have to get your slippers wet, it's too far from the door. So the plain fact of the matter is that if you put a piece of parsley where Bruce is, you won't go out in wet weather to get it. First, you make a cone, Act 1, Scene 1, right? Yeah, and you make that out of basically rubble.
Rubble, not good dirt, rubble.
No, you know, bits of mixed clay and crushed brick and whatever you don't mind losing.
Well, it's not going to be growing in there?
No, you can put limestone in there, you know, and sort of brick and stuff. But they make your rubble. Then start by cutting in and putting proper little steps in and put, you know, put little rocks in, or, you know, double bricks. Or you can go short pieces of wood and just go up to the top, knock the top off. If you're thoughtful and put a pipe up there, you put a little 4-foot sprinkler there. That's it. It works. So your actual form is about like that, and then, however. So you go up a spiral, ramp, which, if you measure it, and you were right, about 6 feet wide and 3 feet high, gives you about 58 running feet of herbs, which is a lot of culinary herbs. And if you take your sun angles right, and this is partially shaded, this is where all your foliage herbs go, you know, particularly for me, parsley and chives. And this is where all your aromatics go, thyme, sage, marjoram. And I usually crown it off with one of my favourite, you know, what do you call it? Rosemary. That's for remembrance. Rue, that's for you. So these are built a lot. And the error you like, this is 6 feet. And if you want to dive your ramp underground and put a child's plastic bath in and plant your water herbs there, some of your mints and that, do so. And I put some water chestnut there too. Yeah. Now where you come to ground level, just take your ramp down under the ground for about that far and have a little marsh and a little pond and a frog or two. And that was a result of a midnight. I was staring at the ceiling one night and I'm thinking, how many dimensions, you know? And I thought, why don't I do 3-dimensional gardens? Don't be ridiculous, you know? I thought it was a ziggurat. But I drew this and explained it to a bloke called Seats Leaflang in Holland, and I didn't put the dimensions on. And he did it 28 feet across and higher than this room and larger than this room. And when I got back there, I couldn't. He said, come and look at my herb spiral, Bill, you know. Went out, I'm faced with this big ziggurat, and of course to get all that dirt, he had a moat. Had a little bridge that he lowered across his moat, because, you know, water table was about a foot away, because lowland's pretty low. So he had his moat, and I said, great Seats, fantastic. You know, and you could walk up his ramps and there was still tons of space. And I said, questions I did not want to ask. I said, is it any advantage? He said, yes. He said, yes, I have 18% more surface area and all the moat. Oh, great, I said. How does it grow? He said, it grows fantastically, Bill. I'm very grateful to you. So I just left it at that. I never told him it should have been 6 feet across. I mean, imagine the work in the damn thing. It was like building the pyramids. And it worked. But it's simply true that for most things you can't scale them up. For an awful lot of things. They work real good when you can reach the middle, standing beside them, and not at all if you've got to do kangaroo leaps to the middle and leap out again. You know? So you don't have, in this, you don't have any path space. It's just a continuous wind-up of about 60. There's not a lot of point. I would put 4 big rocks, fill them up, put 4 little rocks and just do it like that. Yeah. But things reach some sort of efficiency level at a certain distance across in height, and they're certainly very efficient for watering, and I think you have to be able to access your own garden. So you've got to be able to reach all your herbs standing at your door. Well, that's how I built mine. I was in this heavy zone period where I brought everything right up to my door. It ought to be in zone 1. I had my lemon tree there, my herbs there. I'll never look back. It's always the best way to do it. Actually, curiously, you can know all these things and design them and tell yourself that's the way to do it. And then you go and you don't do it properly. And eventually you give yourself a slap in the face and say, no, I better go get my herbs and put them in a spiral. And when you do, it's satisfactory. So we often disobey our own rules, yeah.
Is there a tree that you can plant next to that in the fall will drop its leaves and mulch with or spiral forward?
Yes. Says Barney, says Ben. Yeah, and it's full height in 3 months and has an enormous nodules. Doesn't interfere with anything. And you can whack it off and mulch it all down, and it's full height in 3 months again.
What is your step?
Says Barney, says Ben. must be others.
Is that a common name?
Yes, says Bunia. Right. Between these two, you've got a great, and your spud box, you've got a great deal of your garden. A good non-dig rice plot gives you 6,000 pounds of rice per acre. Read Fukuoka. That's easy, you know. So how much rice do you need a year? Well, let's go back. The people who eat most rice in the world are the Nepalese. The dalbat, you know. And even the littlest Nepalese woman sits down a heap of rice 2 or 3 times a day, like that. So they eat 500 pounds of rice per head. And I don't believe that, but they say they do. Right. But in China, the average rice consumed, and they could be said to be, you know, rice eaters, is only about 150 pounds, 156 pounds or something. Yeah. So how much of an acre do you want to plant in rice? 6,000 pounds in an acre. You want 156. Get busy, get busy.
When you say no dig rice, what do you mean?
Oh, we just strew the rice on the patch, mulch it, and put a little boards around and flood it up. Put a tiny little berm around. Get our rice going. How many acres of rice do you need? Yeah. It's a tiny patch. It's something like this corner here, with Bill sitting in it. So if you mulched this out, sowed between his legs, and didn't miss any, this is enough rice for your family for the year. So if you want another staple, that's it. Then you have to indulge in a little sickle, and you have to thresh over a wooden block. That's perfectly all right. If you want to grow wild rice, which is much more expensive and I think just as good, then put it in pots and put the pots in the water. You get a pound weight of rice per pot, providing you take the grains off as they ripen, and it takes 3 weeks for all of them to ripen. So you can get an awful lot of wild rice in 150 pots, which is not much, much less like that. And the Trendies love wild rice. So, you know, 150 pounds of wild rice you get a ton of rice for that. At least, worth a lot more than a ton of rice.
Do you use 5-gallon buckets? Or
Pardon? No, just about 9-inch, 12-inch pot grow awful lot of wild rice.
What's the reason for the pot?
Well, you don't have to transplant for a start, and you can move the things about in the water and harvest, because you've got to harvest every head. You just make little lanes and go around. You can carry a little artificial canoe in one hand.